I pledge allegiance
to the flag
Flag
of the United States
of
of
America,
States of America,
and to
the
the republic,
Republic
for which it
to
stands,
which it belongs,
one nation,
in
under God,
the God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
in
liberty.
liberty and justice for all.
Hi, Colleen made it. Welcome. And Chris, thanks for coming in. We're just going to do a review of the minutes for a moment here. Looked good from my viewpoint. Debbie, any other comments on the minutes? I guess Andy did have one email recommendation.
I must have missed it. I haven't checked email though since, what's today?
I think it was late last night. So
Oh, sorry, I didn't get to it. So I'll make the correction and send it around. Oh, under number 6C. Would the information be actionable or spur additional? Do you want this in the minutes?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it needed to be, but at the same time, I thought it was good note. I don't know if it, it's needed for the public, but it seemed like a good note for us to keep track of if we ever come back to those. So how are best to make sure we remember that?
Okay, I
question.
see I have other questions. It's under the Covanta point about the PA started a statewide air quality study. So I'll put the question that was raised, would the information be actionable or spur additional investigation? Okay.
And Debbie, I know I didn't make this suggestion last time, but I'm thinking since you're in that section about what Andy just mentioned, it wouldn't hurt maybe to add a link to the Covanta emissions evaluation that Plymouth engaged the environmental consultant to do last summer.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's just a document up on the township website, so it wouldn't hurt to maybe just have that linked in somewhere, even if people can't, they can look it up by name or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's on the main page, or no, didn't I see it there?
It was listed as a news item or a recent item for a while. I haven't looked lately.
Okay, oh, I see it. All right, I'll put the link, add it to the minutes, and then do you want me to send it around to everybody? And then tonight?
No, I think we're okay with those recommended changes. Do we have a motion to adopt the minutes with those pending changes?
I'll make a motion to adopt the minutes.
And may I have a second?
I will.
All right, Debbie, appreciate that. We'll include the minutes for next with those changes. Thank you. So we invited Chris here to give us an overview of what's been happening with recycling and waste and kind of catch us up to speed on what you've learned, because you've been immersed in it. And I know we've all heard, feedback that recycling in the United States has fallen apart, that there's really no market for it and all that. So maybe you can just give us your perspective on what you've been learning, Chris. So appreciate this. And thanks for sending the reports. I will be interested on just what you've learned over the years. So if you don't mind, when you get to that point, maybe you could share your documents and just point us to a couple highlights if that's of interest.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, first of all. Yeah, as you said, Bill, the recycle market is really bad right now. If you recall, going back to 2008, we were actually making $12 a ton. And to date, we're paying a variable rate. We currently pay, I think, $59.95 a ton for trash. And we're paying upwards to $70 a ton to get rid of recycling. So it is difficult to go through the process when there's no market right now, and it's cheaper to throw it out in the trash. There's absolutely no market for glass. So the heaviest thing in our recycle bin is glass, and there is zero market for glass right now. So I guess moving forward, we're part of a 7 municipality consortium where we dump our recycling at Upper Dublin is where the transfer station is for our consortium. And JP Mascara from that point manages our commodity, and they take it up to Birdsboro where they put it on a single stream, a remarkable actually single stream plant, which is German made. It's just a beautiful facility, just the amazing technology these single stream plants have. Which kind of gets me to the plastic bag. They were talking about trying to clean up recycling because so many loads were being rejected, particularly China. Any residual in any of the processed materials, they were just turning and sending them right back. But the plastic bag is the one that gets entangled in the startup equipment on the rollers, and they automatically have to, almost every other hour, have to shut the conveyor off so they get razor blades and cut the plastic bags off the roller, because that literally stops it dead in its tracks. And also a human has to open up the bags and empty its content on the conveyor to get it started. So that's why the plastic bag is always considered the biggest contaminant in the recycle bin, because we really don't know what's in there. And then other folks will say, well, it's a recyclable bag, but the truth of the matter is it'll break down over time, kind of like the mud mitt bags that you see for dog waste. In a year or so, they completely break down. But initially, we can't tell the difference between what's a recycle bag and what's not. And they still have to empty the contents out onto the conveyor to get processed. So because the market's so bad right now, and I think through single stream recycling, and I think I mentioned, maybe not in the email I sent you, but I think I was on an email chain where I was talking about the bowling ball effect, where people were just throwing everything in the recycle bin to try to get weight so they could get their coupons, a recycle bank strategy and market ploy to try to get people to recycle more. The problem with that is there's so much contamination and so much residual in that. In order for us to have a clean market and a clean product to go to market, we need to do a better job of cleaning it up. So what our consortium has done is we're in the process of renegotiating a new contract for them to sort our recycling. And what we've realized is that we need to go back to a dual stream where paper is separate from everything else. And there is a market for paper, there is a market for cardboard, and there is still a market for the aluminum and tin, but everything else, not so much. So we are actually conducting an audit where we're gonna dump our material in a separate container, and they're gonna go through it and find out how much residuals in our recycling. Now, I think we've done a really good job of cleaning it up. We have done a really good job of leaving recycling that has a bag in it, for example, which will prompt a call. People will call our office and say, why wasn't recycling collected? And the first question we ask is, how do you process? And then usually they realize that it was in a bag, and we're able to educate right on the spot. Mike Frank, our foreman, does a fantastic job of making sure that our residents are in compliance and we're putting a cleaner material. The fact that we're rear load makes it easier because as we dump it, we can see exactly what we're dumping. Unlike some of the folks like Upper Dublin and some of those with mechanical lifters that have the big carts that dump overhead that really don't know what's being thrown out. So we have, as far as recycling goes, Plymouth Township, I always I always feel like Plymouth Township does it better than anybody, to be quite honest. Our numbers have come down a little bit because we've cleaned it up a little bit. Or at our high point, we were collecting about 1,500 ton a year. And to date, it's been kind of stopping around 1,300 ton. But we're hoping that the future, actually, with dual stream, they're looking at the possibility of collecting every other week, maybe 1 week do paper and the following week do everything else. That's probably the cheapest way that municipalities can get around not having to hire more people, not having to hire more trucks, or buying more trucks. So we're going to be talking about that. It'll be the future, is probably dual stream again. They're probably going to go back to that way it used to be in some regards. So what I did is I sent everyone a recycling report, actually from 2004, just to give you an idea of when I came on board in 2007. The budget was already set in place and the programs were already set in place. 2008, my first full year, we have instituted the yard waste program, which was a once a week collection. So we diverted that material from the trash stream, and also the single stream, where we started recycling more, and ultimately diverting some of that material as well to the recycle center. As far as 2010, when the Covered Device Act came into being, where you couldn't throw out anything, really, any TVs or any electronics, and the manufacturers were supposed to take them back, like Best Buy and the like. So if you bought a TV from Best Buy, they were supposed to take it back. Well, that never happened. For a little bit it happened, then they started charging, and then they started overcharging, and then Best Buy just said, you know what, we're not doing it anymore. Fortunately for Plymouth Township, we're one of the only games in town in Montgomery County, where we have Magnum, thanks for being green, from Pensauken, who does our electronics collection and has done a fantastic job. It's always, we're always proud to say that Plymouth has an outlet when nobody else really does, or nobody tries to have that outlet, but Plymouth Township does. As a matter of fact, just new today, we are not charging to dispose of TVs anymore. The Covered Device Act is now subsidizing these collectors to pay back. So we have to pay a small fee to get rid of it, but it's not nearly what it used to be. So we have decided not to charge anymore. And we're under contract with a different vendor who will process our material and subsidize the cost. So that's good news. But, going back to this township recycling report. So in 2004, I've highlighted every page, basically to show the value of the total solid waste. So I think the most important number in all this is at the very bottom. And if you're looking at the 2004 recycling report, the 16.7 is of all the solid waste that we collect. So recycling, wood chips, leaves, single stream recycling, trash, everything we pick up. In 2004, we only recycled 16.7% of that material. And in 2014, when our programs were really at our height, we were doing about 52% of everything we recycle, everything we collect, we recycle. And I got to say, it's much more than any other municipality. One of the reasons when part of the Weight Watchers awards that we were getting from the state, we were getting all these recycling rewards because Plymouth Township in 2008, when the economy went south, Plymouth Township kept adding more programs. So we didn't relent, we didn't waver, we just kept pressing forward, because the end game is that because we recycle so much, we've been hovering around 47-48% of everything that we collect, we recycle, which I think is fantastic. But in 2004, we actually collected in trash alone 7,294 ton. And today we average about 4,800 ton. Everything else is recycled. So we've diverted basically 2,327 ton from our waste stream. If you put the number to it, what our tipping fee is, we did an average tip fee of $75 over the course of those 17 years. And we've saved about $2.3 million in tipping fees. One of the last pages that I sent was a budget of 2007 when I first came on, and the budget, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it was $545,000 was our trash disposal budget. And last year it was 280,000. So when you think everything, as you advance in the future, that things are getting more expensive, we've saved about $250,000. And like I said, all said, because of the push to go to zero waste, there's some significant cost savings from the trash side, from the tipping side, and hopefully that the recycle market will rebound and we can start making money instead of spending more money than it is, to dump it out in the trash.
And when you say the recycling market recover, are you imagining that it's only going to be economically feasible for the three that you mentioned, the metals and the paper cardboard, or do you feel that plastic will ever come back?
Good question. I don't know. I really don't know. I know that glass, the only thing that they were using for glass is they were using it as a cover on the landfills. They would process the glass and round it, and actually they would use it as a good cover. The problem with that is the DEP said that it wasn't a good use of recycling, which I absolutely disagree. Instead of using other kinds of tarps and some other things, they're able to use the glass for a cover before they put their soil on top of it. We all thought it was a good idea. It's using it for something, and it's not getting discarded in a landfill. But that's the DEP. It's sometimes, I'm not sure what the reason for that is, but yeah, I'm not sure about the plastic market, to be quite honest.
Are you obligated to, do we have any regulations at a state level that we have to recycle because it's so costly? If you said, hey, it'd be more feasible, economically feasible for us to just start sending it all to trash, lower tipping fee, would you be under any rules that would prevent you from doing that?
Yes, Act 101, DEP's Act 101, I think it was in 1980s, where it was instituted that every, a certain population, they're mandated by law to recycle, to do curbside recycling. And, smaller municipalities or boroughs like Bridgeport fall under that. So they're not necessarily mandated to recycle, but Plymouth Township is, because of our density and our population, that we are required to recycle. Matter of fact, it is a violation for us as me as the recycling coordinator for Plymouth Township. My responsibility is not just what our residents that we pick up from, but it's also the HOAs and also all the businesses that we have to quantify. Every hauler that picks up from Home Depot, for example, or McDonald's or any mom and pop store that is required by law to recycle, we need that data, and we need to report that data to the county. From that recycling, part of our sustainability is that we get monies back from a grant called a 904 grant, which is a performance recycling grant. So the more recycling that we do, the more money we get back. And I would say on average, now the DEP, because of budget woes, has withheld 40% of our money. So that's been frustrating. So again, we had hired a company called Huff Associates who does the booking for us, basically, the book work, does all the math, understands, how to, I don't want to say manipulate the system, but how to make it work the most advantageous way for the township, meaning that we were able to work with others with number wise, like White Marsh Township, Upper Dublin. All of our numbers are our recycling totals are put together. And I don't know how this works, but there's some kind of loophole. But we end up getting about $5,000 or $6,000 more by working together. But Plymouth Township has one of the best rewards off of the Act 904 grant. And again, it's for sustainability. We're getting about $80,000 to $100,000 a year through that grant program. And that's after they're holding 40% of that money. So we're still doing okay there. There's
So
also
just, oh, sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, great information. How do you, or what's the mechanism to work with private companies like Waste Management, Whitetail, to enforce compliance or practices for recycling? Because they serve so many entities and HOAs and all of that.
Yeah, and that's where Huff Associates comes in, and that's why they do such a good job. It was almost impossible for any municipality to track it. They were, before Huff Associates came on board and did basically our accounting, the townships had to rely on companies like Waste Management and Republic and Whitetail and Advanced Disposal, and anybody that collected recycling in our township, we had to track down, and they were supposed to send us how many tons they picked up from McDonald's and the Metroplex and all these places. Now, I don't know if you've seen anybody that has a business in Plymouth Township. Every year there's a mailer sent out and basically says, and our website also says this about the requirement for commercial entities to recycle and report that data to Huff Associates, and they send the form out, and they're supposed to send that back in. And if they don't, Huff Associates contacts them, and they come up with a total, and they process everything and submit to the county and submit to the state, which is a requirement. And then the DEP will cut us a check based on those numbers. They're always looking for a symbiotic relationship in that they want the commercial recycling to be close to the residential recycling, whatever that ratio, the ideal ratio they're looking for. But they're looking for, if you're collecting 400 tons of recycling from residents, they like 400 tons from commercial. And that's kind of where that loophole was, that, White Marsh and Plymouth started working together because they had more density residential and we had more commercial. And together, it was kind of like the perfect match. And we were making a lot more money because of that. And I rely on the creativity of Huff Associates. We pay a fee of about $15,000 a year for them to do this. But in return, they're making us way more money than we could ever do on our own.
Debbie, go ahead. You're on mute.
Chris, I have a question. I've worked at two different commercial properties in Plymouth Township, and neither one had mandatory recycling. And when I tried to get it implemented in either building, it was it fell on deaf ears, and it was like, nope, your landlord doesn't mandate it. And it was like a useless conversation. And I just wondered why it's not commercial properties like, oh my gosh, is it Brandywine? Who owns on Chemical Road there? The Metroplex, not
It was
the Metroplex.
Brandywine, Goldberg.
No, the office
was
building where
Brandywine.
this Brandywine.
It was
Yeah,
Brandywine.
they're like,
Well, you know what you have to do in that case, you have to contact me, and I'll make sure that it happens, because that's usually how it goes. Someone will say, you know what, when there's a requirement to recycle, and it's not up to the landlord to say I don't require recycling,
yeah,
or it's not mandated by us. It's the law.
yeah.
Yeah,
I even
so
pulled it
they
off
do.
of your website. Like even our township website had a thing about the Pennsylvania law, the one that you mentioned. And
Yes.
it just fell on deaf ears that, well, I moved from that building to a different building, different landlord, and it was pretty much the same story. And honestly, I just, I felt like I was beating a dead horse.
Right. Well, I can tell you that personally, I have camped out in HOAs from the DEP that has, I said to the DEP, as the recycling coordinator, it's very important that we enforce our ordinance. And our ordinance is that when these grants come along, these 902 grants, it's a 90-10 split. So the trucks that you see are men with the one-arm bandit, we call it, to pick up leaves. That's a $260,000 truck. And believe it or not, we pay about $23,000 for those trucks.
Wow.
And that's part of the grant. So when you're in compliance, when you do the right thing, and I got to tell you, the information that I share with you today, when there was talk about disbanding the 902 grant, I actually wrote a letter for them, for the Recyclers of America. And it was the first letter that was on the website to save it. And, I was proud of that fact that when people call the DEP or they call the county recycling coordinator, Veronica Harris, they always point everyone to Plymouth Township. Do what Plymouth does. And it can be better, just as you said. There's other places that are still not recycling. What we always say is, as I am the recycling coordinator for Plymouth Township. Huff Associates manages that entity, but it's my responsibility to make sure people recycle. And if anyone has an issue with recycling, when people take the time to recycle, they expect it to be recycled. And matter of fact, I just wrote a letter to Sussex Square for the same. A resident watched them come in. Whitetail came in and dumped all the trash into the same truck. And so I wrote a letter, and they called me today, left a message and said, hey, it was contaminated and that's why they threw it all in the same truck. But I've had this, when I said about camping out, I camped out in all day. I waited for this trash truck to come because somebody said they're throwing everything out in the same truck. Well, I waited and waited and waited. And finally, 4 o'clock came. I left and went home, and the resident called me and said, "Oh my God, they're here. And it turned out that, he's like, yeah, they're throwing the recycling out again. Well, it turned out they weren't throwing the recycling out. They were doing it the right way at that time. They did one time do it the wrong way. And I wrote a letter, but the DEP just says, you know what? Plymouth does it better than anyone. And because I asked, I said, what do you want me to do? And he said, oh, I want you to catch them. so they wanted me to, and I was out there. I did try. But we do take it serious, and I take it serious because of how much money we've saved. We've saved the township. When you think of that $2.3 million, it is literally burning money at the trash and steam plant when you don't have to do that. And so when we can recycle, we can renew, we can reuse, we can eliminate and divert some of that, it makes a big difference.
Chris, your point about these independent haulers like Whitetail, we have that for our HOA. Is Huff good enough that they can predict based on the number of residents in each HOA or separate pickup, what ratio they should be collecting, so that if they start seeing it falling off what you expect, they could then tag the hauler and say, hey, your numbers aren't right for what we expect from that population?
Yeah, that's always a tough one, but I hear what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, it certainly would red flag, and our guy has been doing our township for so long. Matter of fact, Huff Associates has been working with this township since '05. So 2005, they started working with us. So they do have an idea of when numbers are skewed, when numbers are too high or too low. And it's hard to be totally honest. I don't know how they put accurate numbers together, because, they don't have a scale. When they go to McDonald's and they pick up, McDonald's, and then they go somewhere else and pick up the next one, they're taking that material and finally getting on the scale after they picked up on all day. So how they're coming up with these numbers, I really don't know, to be honest.
And given that plastic is the worst case economically, what is happening to plastic? Where's it going? What's the end result for it?
Honestly, I think it's being baled, and then it's being discarded as trash. I got to believe that, because I don't know if there's any market for it. I really don't know, to be honest.
Do you think Birdsboro would be sending it to a landfill, or would they send it to an incinerator? I have to believe that if we burn plastic, it's got to have a more harmful effect than if we dump it in a landfill.
Yeah, I'm not certain where I know they take their recycling to Birdsboro in the single stream plant. From there, it gets baled, and from there, it has a market, and they're sending them out. So if you go on the floor of the single stream plant, they have all their baled commodities, and however that gets shipped out, if it has a destination, it does. I'm not sure who's the market, where the market is, and what happens. And it's a good question, and I'll see if I can find out.
Is anyone interested in a tour? Maybe we should go up there someday.
That would be great.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's fascinating. Yeah, it really is. It's impressive. They have eddy current readers, so you have your magnets that are taking the metals off the conveyor, and then the magnet induces a current called an eddy current in a aluminum, and it kicks it off into another bin. So aluminum's getting kicked off the conveyor, and metal is going right underneath and dropping into another bin. One thing they tell you, they don't want you to smash cans, to try to condense them because the readers, the character readers, see flattened metal as paper. So it actually blows the aluminum off the chute before it gets to the eddy current, thinking that it's paper. So I guess in some ways it's a flawed system, that it doesn't read the metals and the ferrous and non-ferrous metals before it gets there, because if you do smash it, it reads it as a piece of paper. But unfortunately, when you're up on the line, there's a chute that goes to trash, and so that's what we're trying to eliminate, that residual factor, that people are still putting shoes and things that are maybe recyclable somewhere, but not in our single stream plant. For example, our blue bin is a number 2 plastic, but it's not acceptable in our single stream plant. So there's a place to recycle it, but it's just not in our single stream world. Because it just can't fit on anything. Yes.
Oh, sorry. I apologize. I'm not on camera. I'm driving kids around. You talk about, things that people are putting in recycling that shouldn't be there. And, I know your team does a pretty good job educating people, but are there like educational initiatives that we can kind of have as an ongoing thing to remind people what doesn't, my husband had gone out and he bought this, box of clear bags that say for recycling, but you don't want those. So, how are we educating the public about what should go as an ongoing thing, right? Because people forget, or they're new to the area
Right.
and they don't know.
Yeah, I mean, when we had our newsletter, the website, I know Brandon does a great job of, keeping things current on the website. We leave things in recycle bins. Sometimes, people come home and go, hey, recycling wasn't collected. And that prompts a phone call. And so we're able to educate on the spot. But I mean, honestly, I think people really do a pretty good job of doing the right thing. If we can do one thing better, it has to be cleaner. People put paper towels that are soiled and put paper towels in recycling, and that's trash. We used to originally take pizza boxes in recycling, but then they've realized that they're more contaminated than they're not. So with the cheese and with the sauce and with the oil and grease, it ends up being discarded. So they don't want pizza boxes. So you'll see us leaving pizza boxes because some still think it's recycling.
We can
And-
take them in compost, just so you know.
Right. Okay. And
Yeah, so I just wonder if that's like an area, where this group could focus is on, educational outreach as, an ongoing thing, ongoing reminders so people don't slip, and reminders about, what's clean and what,
Right. Yeah. I mean, anything would help to make it cleaner, to make it, the plastics 1 through 7. Some people think that, drinking glasses are recycling, and they're actually not. They're looking for jars and stuff like that, bottles and the like. They're not looking for, somebody's windows to go into the recycle bin. And we still get that from time to time. But for the most part, people have done a really good job. I think when we collected the most, which was about 1,600 a ton, and we went from, when we did single stream, we were probably, or when we weren't doing single stream, we were collecting about 900 ton was our most. And now we're still doing about 1,300 every year. But the problem is people were recycling a lot of things that really weren't recyclable. And so our numbers are down a little bit, but it's a cleaner product.
And Chris, you mentioned going to every other week for this dual stream. Are we still doing, or how often do we do trash versus recycling? Are they on different days?
Well, there's a Monday, Thursday route, and there's a Tuesday, Friday route. And not everyone on the Tuesday, Friday route gets recycling done. So one group will have their recycling. Everyone gets the recycling picked up once a week. Everyone gets their trash picked up twice a week. And it's kind of 4 to 1 trash to recycling. I know early on, a lot of people were saying, hey, why don't we collect recycling twice a week and trash once a week? And the numbers aren't there.
And so in this behavior change, are you recommending that residents have 2 different bins, one for the paper products and one for the metal products, or the other products, I should say?
Not yet, until we figure out how we can get back to making money on the commodity instead of spending money. Until that happens, and we're hoping to figure this out before year's end. So I'm not really sure, I'm not really sure where it's going to go. I mean, some folks are talking about getting a split truck, one that does paper, one does, I don't know if you've ever seen a split truck, but it looks like if in the back of the truck, it looks like 2 mini trash trucks. And on the top, it's a top loader. And it takes a tote that one side has paper, the other side has everything else, and it just flips over top and goes in the appropriate bin. But they're very expensive as well. So we will probably continue to do what we do. And I think we still could manage, if we take our cardboard out and paper and put it in one bin and collect that 1 week and do the other single stream material the other week. It may work. I'm not really sure.
Well, this is really helpful. I hope you could, I think this brought up a big topic. You could see in the email that we also have interest in talking with you about composting and also zero waste. So if you're willing to hang around, we'd love to have your input on these ideas. Also, I want to bring Colleen into the conversation because she did speak with us a few months ago about the possibility of residential composting. Colleen, do you want to kind of give a intro to your approach with communities?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Chris, for all you do for Plymouth Township. I've been a Plymouth resident for 16 years, and we're really impressed with what the public works does for the township. And I'm looking at your numbers. That's phenomenal that you're saving us money. So and I like that you're moving towards zero waste. It's all great. It's all good stuff here.
Thank you.
Curious. Yeah, I'm curious as to if there are any initiatives on the composting front. That's kind of why I reached back out to Bill. I was on a call in the fall, and I would like to be a part of the EAC. I've been on a number of different municipality EAC meetings and meeting other folks in the community. I've been doing this since 2017, and basically, I'm really passionate about sustainability. And I wanted to find a way where I could help others compost, and if they weren't able to do it in their yard. So I started this business, Back to Earth Compost Crew, and basically our mission is to keep food waste out of the landfills and put it back into the soils in our communities. By we work with a couple of different compost locations, or a farm and another compost location, and we work with them. They compost the food waste that we pick up. So that's our business model for now. We also we do residential curbside pickup. We also work with businesses. We also do compost education. We do classes, and we also we have a compost collection site. Excuse me, my daughter's talking in the background. We have compost collection sites, and we work with farmers markets, and another business, not a farmers market, but just in the community of Phoenixville. So our main area is suburban Philadelphia, focusing on like Montgomery County. I'm from King of Prussia initially, so I'm passionate about this area and making and helping people be more sustainable. Montgomery County, parts of Chester, and parts of Bucks County, really where there's interest, and trying to create routes around those areas. So we currently have about 300 customers residentially and farmers market, maybe a little bit more. And then we have a number of commercial customers, breweries. I would say we haul around 3 tons a week. We're small, but we're moving, getting larger. And I'm looking to connect with the municipalities that it seems like a lot of them are moving towards zero waste, and there's initiatives going that way, which is fantastic. And I'm noticing that there's some grant money available. So working to keep basically keep the food waste in the communities and create compost in the communities instead of hauling the food waste and, doing it that way. So I was talking with another business similar to mine in Maryland, Virginia area, and they have a unique approach to it, where we're keeping it in the communities and creating compost outposts. I can pull it up if you have a minute, if anyone wants to kind of see. I actually didn't prepare it, but it's a way that you can compost in a smaller area, even less than 1/4 of an acre, and also combining that with the leaves, and mulch from municipalities to create it. Obviously, we can't make it just from food waste. We need some other feedstock in there and input besides food waste. So municipalities and farms are great, partners for what we do, so to speak. So that's kind of where I'm at, and I'm looking to, help decrease the amount that you pay for trash, make sure that it doesn't go to the incinerator or the landfill, keep it out of those areas, and really just keep it back into the soil. You probably know, we're by doing this, we can reverse our climate change. We can really draw the carbon from, into the soil. But what we need people to start making that change. So education is the key. We're doing a lot of compost education. I'm happy to teach people how to compost in their yard. Working with IKEA, we're doing a webinar for their customers. I've worked with a number of businesses in the area to do webinars, just teaching people how to do it in their yards, if they do have a yard. And then we're the next best thing. So, taking it to be composted, and then twice a year we give back compost to our subscribers. That's the way our business model works. So that's a little bit about us. I don't know if anyone has any questions. I'm happy to answer.
Colleen, have you approached any other municipalities in trying to set something up with a community on a way?
I have, talking with Ambler, also Borough. I'll be talking with Lower Gwinnett. We haven't moved forward with any, to be honest with you, kind of just in the initial stages. And it's really something that's new for me. So I'm kind of also in the information gathering, which municipalities are interested in doing this, who has been teaching composting, what kind of goals they have. Do they even want to get started with compost? There's some that I'm noticing, some that do, and some that don't have interest right now. So I think that also drives it as well, where the interest is.
And could I ask, how is the composting process with food waste? Is there, I think people envision rodents and the like, with the food waste composting. How does it, if you could give me a summary of how does that process work?
Sure. So right now I'm not processing it myself, but I would be, and eventually I will. But when I work with the farms, really it's just keeping it covered, keeping, when we dump, when the food waste is dumped, making sure that something else goes on top of it. So, and also I think having, we don't have meat, bones, or dairy, and that really draws rodents. So where in the places that, where I compost, I partner with. The one is actually indoors. It's in a greenhouse. And I don't believe they have any problems. They haven't said anything. I've, outdoors, where we take it, they haven't mentioned, problems with that. I know in, a backyard situation, if you're putting the wrong items, if you're putting, your pizza crusts, if you're putting meat, bones, and dairy, that is a recipe to attract rodents. So we educate not to put that stuff in your backyard compost. You can also get an enclosed composter that would help with, potential animals, but also covering it, doing it properly is one way to avoid. Making sure that pieces are chopped up fine, making sure that you're putting.
Is your audio,
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Colleen, audio stopped? Sounds like she's.
To keep them out, but also I was just looking at a webinar to educate myself a little bit more about that. There is an Institute for Self-Reliant, local self-reliance, and they're a wealth of knowledge. If anyone's interested in checking them out, they do have a lot of compost education. So
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And just so you know, I am I'm part of the Montgomery County Public Works Association. I'm the vice president. So
Nice.
in a way to connect, you know, I have a huge audience. Everyone in Montgomery County, all the public works directors, all the decision makers. You know,
That's fantastic.
yeah. So if you need to get the word out, I'm one email away from everyone.
Wonderful.
And, you know, next year I'll be the president of the organization. So we're trying to do a lot of good. I mean, we currently run a compost process. You know, we take all the yard waste and we actually have what I consider the perfect mix. You know, you talk about a 30-to-1 carbon to nitrogen ratio. For some reason, we have the right blend of browns and greens to make up a great compost. And, you know, I have a big old compost thermometer that we throw in there, and
Nice.
it's always about 150 degrees, and, you know, we're turning that constantly. But it's amazing how much it breaks, how fast it breaks down. And we give that all back to the community at no cost.
That's wonderful. We've been a recipient. So
Good.
grateful for that.
Colleen, do you have any estimates for what a typical food waste family might produce? I mean, just to give us an idea of what's the ratio usually out of our solid waste?
40 to 50% of our waste is food waste. It's pretty staggering. I was reading, you know, for every 10,000 household home compost, an estimated 1,400 tons per year could be diverted from disposal, avoiding about 72,000 per year in disposal fees alone. So there is, you know, they say, oh, what's my little compost gonna? Well, everyone doing it together, it adds up to a pretty big change, I will say.
So given that kind of scenario, what would be if you were going to create a business plan for a community, what would be a somewhat revenue neutral approach? Because if you are diverting, you're saving on trash tipping fees, you could make a profit, Chris could make a profit for the township. How would that look?
That's a good question. I'd have to crunch some numbers. I will say, you know, home composting separate from a curbside company like mine. So I did put some. I should email them over, but I did put some numbers together based on White Marsh, Plymouth, and Cunchy. Since we are all surrounding the Covanta incinerator, I was very passionate the one day, and I was working up some numbers based on, you know, if we did a pilot program and if how many households contributed. I have some initial figures on what we could do for a compost outpost location where we could process 400 households a week, I believe, and what that would look like. And I can break it down and email that, but that's kind of my first initial kind of look into this, is kind of figuring out what kind of program we could start with. You know, if you wanted to not kind of go all in, but kind of dip our toes and do a pilot program, what that would run, what that would look like. So
What kind of truck are you collecting in?
So right now we just have pickup trucks.
Okay.
So we're kind of keeping it simple. We needed something 4-wheel drive because one of our compost sites is not a pad. It's basically kind of mud. It's kind of muddy. So I've been stuck a couple of times, but not with the 4-wheel drive. But I'm looking at different vehicles like an F-350 with a back on it, something to, you know, make sure that it doesn't drip, you know, when we collect it and things like that. Because right now we're using containers or trash cans. So they're not leaking, but if I'm putting in the back of the truck, obviously we have to be aware of that as well.
So we'll just open up the conversation, Chris, if so it might be worth having another conversation after, you know, kind of think out the business model for that, because if there would be a revenue neutral for the township. So, you know, when cost the township and yet the consumer benefits. I know, how do you incentivize behavior change for a resident to do that? Because they just throw it out in the trash. So why would they
Right.
change their behavior to now?
Some of them have been incentivized. I was talking with one company who was working with a municipality. They started by paying for partial, like I charge $18 a month and my customers receive 2 pickups a month every other week with a 5-gallon bucket, or $25 for 2 buckets every other week. So they would give them, $8 towards that. And then kind of as time goes on, kind of back off, and give less. But that's kind of one of the reasons I was looking at the grant money, is because, obviously it's available, or it was cut off, I think it was March 1st, but look for next year. But I thought that was a great opportunity to look to do a pilot program where some of it is, grant money. I don't know all the ins and outs of this. I'm not an expert by any means. I'm just I'm passionate about making sure that if food waste doesn't end up in the landfills or incinerators. So I'm doing the best I can.
Here's one for you. So you can pay people in Bitcoin. That's
Oh, there you go. Oh man.
Give them a credit, right?
There's a number, I will say there is a number of different ways to do this. There's the community composting where, we're doing it in small areas in the community. There's, education about compost in their yard. And, or there's like the hauling of the compost to a much, a further location where, I'm looking into, spending, hauling fees and, toting dumps, large dumpsters. But I don't want to get into that. I mean, my mission is to keep it within the community. So if I can, and to be able to give the soil back to the, just like you give back the mulch, the compost from the leaves, it's important. It's
I
important
think
that
you could partner with some of the builders, like some of our local builders, and I'll tell you why. Because Blair, for example, is doing the Driscoll property, which is Payone right there on. So what they do, so they will haul our compost and they'll amend their soil when they do their top dressing. So, and they do it all in one shot. So they run it through a machine right there on site, and they mix their soil and amend it with our compost. And I think that's maybe a good model for you to be able to take your material and you have a premium compost with their soil amendment. And I think it would be a good mix.
It sounds like it. I didn't even think of that. I'm glad you mentioned it.
And Chris, what is the current trash tipping fee?
$59.95.
So if you were able to save a certain number of tonnage each year by these residents, doing the composting part of it, would some of that money be able to go back to those residents who were incentivized? You could discount, maybe give them a portion back for what you save.
Well, that would be difficult, but it would certainly go for sustainability for our, buying equipment, buying our trash trucks, certainly would go a long way, sustaining our program and making, and being green and reducing our carbon footprint. I think is the win in this.
Yep.
I would agree. Yeah.
So just moving on to zero waste, I guess
Thank you, by the way. Thanks for letting me talk. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Colin.
Do you have a website or something, Colleen?
Yes, backtoearthcompost.com.
Thank you.
Yep,
And
you're welcome.
I included that in the agenda email today too, that link.
Hey, Bill, can I just ask a question?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
We talked about in our earlier meetings about when Colleen was there before, about maybe having a community garden or something set up, and it would go hand in hand with a composting that could be on site next to it, maybe at the Weather Hill Park or something. Was that ever mentioned to maybe Chris, or what his thoughts were about something like that?
I know Rick had mentioned, someone had brought up the community garden idea at one time, but I don't know if that ever got
Yeah,
initiated.
there was mention of a community garden a few years back. And I guess they put a survey out. They were looking for someone to step up and run it. The council wasn't interested in the township, administering the program, but they thought if they got some type of a committee together to run it, the township would provide the space at Harriet Weatherall Park. And at that time, there was really no one interested in running it. I mean, it's something that I think we talked about it a few months back.
Mhm.
Something that, maybe there is some interest now. Maybe we could revisit it, but at the time there was just no one, no one willing to step up and run the program.
Do you know who might have had the survey, or could you get a hold of the survey that was sent out?
Survey was sent out through the Parks and Rec Department. I could ask to see if they still have the actual survey and the results of the survey.
Bill, what do you think about us, putting it
Yeah.
out? or
Yeah,
sending-
that'd be worth just exploring to see what the data was from the time they did it and see, whether, we could leverage that and now add in these other ideas, these newer ideas, sustainability for the township overall. It may be part of a more comprehensive picture of where we want to go.
I think it would be good to add in, would someone be interested in learning more about composting, and what are their thoughts about the community garden and maybe having composting for the community next in the same area? I don't know, what are your thoughts?
Those are good ideas. Yep. It's worth
I have
finding.
a question. I have a question for Colleen. Colleen, have you
Sure.
contacted Maple Acres Farms? You say you deal with some farms. That's a local farm in Plymouth Township.
Yeah, so initially I did with no response. Since then, I've been on the just 100%. I really haven't circled back with them, but I've talked to Pennypack in Horsham. I actually was looking at, I think Harriet Weatherall is an excellent location because it does back up to, it backs up to, I don't know if that's township land or does Maple Acres own that property?
The township owns Harriet Weatherall Park. We lease it to Gary, who owns Maple Acres Farm. He farms a good portion of it.
Okay. That's what I was thinking, that the location would be great there because of the, if they would like to work with us in composting, we could definitely use what they have for feedstock. The other thing is I did talk to Erdenheim Farm. They actually do compost on farm. We're working together to possibly get an off food waste permit for them to accept food waste. Is Erdenheim in Plymouth Township? Or is that White Marsh?
Right.
White Marsh? Okay, got it. But I would like to, it would be great to circle back with Maple Acres. I think that's a great location.
Yeah, I don't know. Chris and I had talked years ago about trying to move his compost operation to Harriet Weatherall because he's kind of like, he would love to have more space. And there was something with the lands trust on what type of things could be done at Harriet Weatherall Park. And I don't remember
Interesting.
the actual outcome was whether or not you could do something like that there, because there are some limitations on what you can do on the property.
Is there a way that you could find that out, or where could I look for that?
Yeah, I can find out what Chris, do you remember what the outcome was?
I think you're right, Rick. There was something that had to do with the land trust, and they would not allow us to put that on that site, at least a part of it. There might be a section that we are able to.
Yeah, I'll find out what what those rules were.
The
And
park is
Colleen-
permanent open space. It's preserved as permanent open space, so that I think there are limits because it does have to stay fields and forest, and I don't know the law or but I do know that it's because it is preserved as permanent open space. I think that's what limits things like trying to develop it in some way. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think initially when Rick and I talked about it, we were looking at an education component to the composting process about bringing, and not for profit, just, to give back to the community, but to have tours and have, to show our horizontal grinder and how it's processed and how it sits and how it gets turned and when it needs more water, when it needs more nitrogen, when it's smelling too bad, it has too much nitrogen. So there's a whole bunch to it. We're fortunate because we really don't have to do much to our pile. I mean, it's amazing how
That's great.
it does a pretty good job. But Colleen, have you ever reached out to Upper Merion? You're a King of Prussia person. Upper
Yes,
Merion has a great compost facility.
I just
One of the best.
they do over at Huser Park. I spoke with Jeff the other day.
Okay.
So I will be reaching out to the liaison and possibly talking with their EAB.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm reached out to him and we literally just had that conversation. So kind of figuring out what to do next. But they have a nice spot and also the farm park. I mean, Norristown Farm Park. They're opening a new nature center there. They compost there as well. They have a beautiful machine. I talked to them a couple years ago and nothing came of it, but now since they're doing, they have this new initiative and they're going to be doing programming there, it might be a better time because they have the space they have and they're already composting in windrows. So
yeah, well, that's good. I mean, we always anticipated that we have about 30% of our waste was food waste. So, and you said it was probably closer to 40 or 50. And, again, if you're going to pluck out a percentage of that out of our waste stream, we're looking at, I guess, 30% of our current waste stream is, 1,200, 1,500 ton.
Actually, I should back up. The compostables is not just, it's 40 to 50, which is cardboard, paper, anything compostable, food, cardboard, paper, and like leaves. So yeah, food waste is probably would be like 30 to 40. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And part of that is, the big stores like Costco and the like, you talk about zero waste. The perishables, buying in bulk and throwing all that out when you don't, you kind of get all that. That's where a lot of our waste comes from. So if we can eliminate, buy the non-perishables and the perishables buy only what you're going to eat, that will reduce a lot of the waste stream.
For sure. And also kind of looking at that, I don't know if I sent the hierarchy in the email, just really educating, like you had said, like educating consumers what they cannot, can and cannot put in their recycling, educating people, how can you initially not buy, too much and then throw it, throw this much out, but really focus on purchasing what you need. It's just, it really does come down to educating and also, making sure that you can reuse, there's different ways to reuse food before you put it in the compost pile. It's tedious. It sounds tedious, but it does add up to less being thrown into the trash in the long run. But it's, and I feel like it's definitely becoming more popular. I don't know. I grew up in the era where we were starting to compost or starting to recycle. So I remember throwing, being the one in my household, like throwing the stuff that goes in the recycling bin type of thing. But my kids are starting to say, okay, well, we're going to be composting that. Like, it's just their kids are growing up that way. There's more and more people that realize that this is how we're going to, we need to be more sustainable if we're going to have a planet. So there's definitely something to be said. I think that there's a really good time to do this.
So yeah, thank you, Colleen. This is great discussion. So just moving on to the zero waste principles, we have this concern among some residents around the Cabana plant about the emissions and odors, and there's been such a reaction to that fear that they've asked us to consider, closing down the Covanta plant and asking Plymouth to pull out of their contract. So, that's one angle of concern. And then we've got the trying to reduce our waste stream. And so zero waste would be really good to help us move in that direction. I'd just like to, and then thinking back to, the pulling out of Covanta, White Marsh 2 years ago decided to go with landfill, even though it was causing their residents an increased cost per resident. Now, we don't pay for trash or recycling pickup, but White Marsh apparently does. So they could kind of just segregate that and say, well, you're just going to be paying a higher fee here. Whereas Plymouth is part of the general fund, so they would have to raise taxes or institute an independent fee. So,
And Bill, if I can interject,
around that, yeah, Chris, I'd like your perspective on all that.
yeah, and I only say that I think when we're talking White Marsh, I think we're talking apples to oranges, because JP Mascara as their hauler, they have what's called a municipal contract. So they put out the bid, and the low bid hauler was JP Mascara. JP Mascara happens to have a transfer station in the Bridgeport area, right over the Danhauer Bridge, and they also have their own landfill. And they're also under contract with Covanta, and I understand that they're not going to be taking it to Covanta, but they do have their own transfer station. So for them, it's really not that big of a deal for JP Mascara to say, "Hey, don't go to Covanta, just go to your own transfer station." For us to go anywhere but Covanta would cripple our department. Would be incredibly difficult to manage, just because the fact that it's in our township. Every major hauler, even though they have their own transfer station or their own dumps, they're all contracted with Covanta because of time and money. If you're right there, it's easier for them to go into the Covanta and dump there than it is to drive an hour to Birdsboro or to some of these other landfills that in my opinion are incredibly dirty and carry more bacteria and are, the breakdown leaches into the soils and the like. And so, I think you'd have more opposition if we had a landfill in our backyard with seagulls flying around and dirty trucks versus the Covanta plant. And I've always felt I worked in the on a trash truck in 1997, and I never felt compromised by going into the plant ever. And our foreman has been there 21 years and has never said to me, it's just not safe. It doesn't feel safe. And so it's difficult to even think that to go anywhere else would be difficult to manage with what we have. We definitely have to go out and get more resources, more trucks, more men, because right now on a round trip just to Covanta, with no traffic and no line at the dump, it's probably a half hour, 40 minutes, by the time we load up and get to the dump off and get back into our route. A half hour or 40 minutes has transpired. Anywhere else, the tipping fee is almost double of that of Covanta. And the truth of the matter is, whether we go somewhere else or not, Covanta will still continue to take trash. And I think we put ourselves in a really awkward and difficult position for the residents of the township to take it anywhere else, because some of the landfills, you're talking hours to get back onto the route, and we dump twice a day, all of our trucks. So when you say, "Hey, I'm going to the dump," we won't see that truck for 2 hours.
And so Yeah, I realize this is a really tough issue. I guess there has been some worry, I guess, by the public that incineration, even though it's regulated with DEP and EPA, that those emission controls aren't as strong as they could be for public health. And so, yes, we're affording a much financially, less costly trash removal, but in some sense, if the incineration is causing health problems to the public, that health cost impact could be higher than the savings that we're making. So I guess because we don't know for sure what the damage is from the incineration, I guess this is a question that's going to be debated back and forth in multiple ways. But I think, there are some people's concern about the health impact that's affecting their young kids. So if you live in Plymouth for 20 years, and you breathe the air, how could that impact your future life? So you're right, it's hard to predict. And it's hard to say what's right and what's wrong. Landfills are as unhealthy, I'm sure. So it's a tough problem for the United States and us, particularly, I guess, it's not our concern right here for environmental justice, but in Chester, there's a whole coalition of residents trying to shut down Covanta Chester because of the impact it's had on the environmentally disadvantaged, socially disadvantaged community. So they've got a whole website, they've got all these petitions, et cetera, et cetera. So, I know we aren't going to come up with the right answer here. So it sounds like zero waste is the direction to start moving. What's your thoughts on zero waste and what you've heard about how tough it might be to implement at a municipal level, whether you've got any ideas about it or any partners that have talked about it in your circle? Just want to get your reaction to it.
Not really. I think the end goal, when you talk zero waste, I don't think you could ever get to zero waste, but I think the concept drives you to a point where you can do your best to get and reduce. And we talk about these numbers in 2004, where they were and how long it took us. In 2020, we went from 7,294 trash tons to 4,800 trash tons. Trying to recycle, trying to renew, trying to reuse, trying to do all that stuff. And we've reduced it by 3,000 ton, but it's still, to say to go back to cloth diapers, for example. I guess that would be an example of a process of going to zero waste, and you take a step backwards. So, this is, how you would have to retrain people to go to zero waste. As I stated before about perishable versus non-perishable, where people, we have these big, large box stores, Costco and BJ's, that they're selling all this food, and we end up discarding so much of it. So if we can stop doing that, we are heading to a better place for zero waste. But to say I'm going to make my chair into, strip my wood chair down and make it something else, and not discard it, is asking a lot from this community. We're still trying to keep the shoes out of the recycle bin.
Okay, so yeah, I realize these are tough challenges. Actually, we did have a talk with us. Someone visited us a couple of years ago from Weaver's Way in Ambler, and she is actually their zero waste consultant and specialist. And so she's.
Oh, I know her.
You know her?
Yes. Yeah.
She kind of pitched, the principles that if we all were conscious of this, that we go into Weaver's Way and we bulk purchase with our own containers, and you just pick up your cereal, your dry beans, whatever, in your own containers, and you never really have to throw out the packaging. So I don't know whether we could put enough pressure on BJ's or some of these other big stores but that's the idea, is to try to get more bulk availability of product so that we don't have all of this extra packaging to throw away. What's your thoughts on? I know you can't change business principles.
There's more of those stores are popping up where you have bulk product. Goodbye Supply just opened in Philadelphia. My screen froze. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. More stores like that. There's a lot of educational groups on social media that are just zero waste, sustainable living. It's really, I will say, it's making a comeback. We're going back. we're going back to cloth diapers now. Some people I know are using them, but really, there's no. We're not going to be zero, but we can reduce a lot.
I would agree.
Yeah, I don't know if you were asking Chris, or I'm sorry, I just kind of jumped in there.
No, you're good.
So I know these are tough behavioral changes, and implementing something this at a local municipal level would be pretty ambitious for us as a group. But if we've got some passionate members here that want to take on any of this principle, I think we can keep talking about it as we go forward. Just to tie in here back to the recycling concern with plastic bags. We've got a few municipalities in Pennsylvania that have instituted a single-use plastic, at least bag ban, and we could go for straws and or single-use utensils at some of the fast food restaurants. So anybody have any thoughts? Is this something that this CAB would want to bring forward and propose a plastic bag ban, so we could join some of our neighbors that are working on this?
I think it's a great idea.
Any of my members interested?
No, I would be interested. It's Carolyn.
We have I don't know, do we have affiliations? Is there like a Plymouth Business Council or something where we could work, in partnership with local merchants to do that, as opposed to instituting a ban? So it feels like it's more of a partnership, not just, with our big commercial residents, right? Our big, BJ's and other the supermarkets and such, but our smaller merchants. So it doesn't feel like we're instituting something that might be a hardship on small merchants, for example.
Great idea, Eunice. I like that partnership. Chris, what's our relationship with our commercial businesses like? How well do we have a partnership?
Well, I mean, if you wanted to go ahead and do that, I mean, with the coordination with our recycling health associates and the website, to try to get people to not use. I mean, again, the plastic bag is detrimental to our recycling efforts, and so if we can eliminate it, I have no problem with it, and we could, perhaps, in my organization as well, we can talk about that on a Montgomery County platform, and have the strength in numbers, with Montgomery County would certainly bode better than one municipality trying to make it happen. I think everyone would agree, since we're all kind of taking our trash and recycling to the same place. I think everyone's got a vested interest in eliminating those bags, because they're all problems for everyone. Not to mention the environment. Forget about the single stream. The most important part is how it's contaminating our earth.
I'll try to track down the 3 resolutions from Lower Merion, Narberth, and Westchester that have proposed those plastic bag bans. I know right now they started this a couple of years ago, so they're underneath the Pennsylvania ban on that ban. So they cannot implement their rule because the state has said you cannot force people not to use plastic bags. But hopefully they're in a lawsuit right now to argue that benefit. And so we could be prepared that when they get a resolution to that, we could maybe join forces. And as Chris said, we could put this in front of the Montgomery County Consortium and see how many others would want to support this going forward.
So is there currently a state law that would not allow us to enact such an ordinance?
Yeah, well, after Narberth and Westchester made their bans, the state made a ruling that they had to postpone implementing that for a year, and that would have been this last June. But because of COVID, the state extended it indefinitely. So now the three are going to fight that in a lawsuit argument.
Didn't someone do a study and found that of the 3 ways to reduce the use of single-use plastic bags, either giving a refund, 5 cents a bag or whatever, banning it, or charging for the bag, that charging for the bag changed people's behavior the most?
I think
Fascinating.
That wouldn't be a ban, that would be a surcharge.
incentive. Yep, and that's actually what Narberth did. They asked for a charge of 10 cents per bag.
Oh, and that's what the state banned?
Yep.
Oh,
Really?
Even
Wow.
But see, Aldi,
I can't.
Aldi does that now.
I can't.
Right.
Say, we'll find out. I don't mean to state whether that was the issue with their ruling. But yeah, so these are some great topics to keep going. This has been really a good round of discussion. Chris, really appreciate your insights into what you've learned from recycling, and Colleen, love your ideas on how we can move forward to composting. If there are any other questions for either of them, we do have some more agenda items I'd like to move on to. Does anybody have any follow-up they'd like to ask before we move on to their next items?
I have one question for Colleen. You mentioned no eggs, dairy, no dairy, meat, and bones. What about eggshells?
So eggshells, if you're putting them in your home compost, rinse them out, rinse them before. If we're taking them, you don't have to do that. So, but if you're putting them in your home compost.
We just lost you. You lost your voice. I'll email you, because since we got hens and are putting eggs in, I now have rats in my compost. I think it's the eggs.
Can you repeat that? My internet was going out there when you were talking.
Oh, I was just saying, sorry, we lost you for a minute. Since we started keeping chickens and throwing a lot of eggshells in our compost, we have rats, and I think it may be the eggshells attracting them.
Yeah, that could be it.
All right.
Yeah, I would. You could do them separately, crush them separately, put them in a flower garden, and put some soil over top of it.
Yeah, they're good for tomatoes. Thank you.
Yeah. And the other thing, if we ban plastic bags, there's a great opportunity. If we use brown bags, they're compostable. They're your browns in your compost. We love when people line their buckets with the brown bags. It keeps their buckets cleaner, and we can take the brown bag and compost it. So it's a win-win.
Nice.
I'm sorry, I had one question for Chris, and I apologize if you guys covered this when I was kind of in and out of this call, but I'm going to keep coming back to resident education. And, with the whole push of, some of the community being appropriately concerned about Covanta, but needing to present the reality of, the financials and, what the alternatives are. If you shut down Covanta, then what do we do with our waste? Where does it go? And what is the impact on the community? Have we done a community education campaign that kind of shows how much we've reduced what we send to Covanta and landfills over time, especially since we started the recycling, and then also kind of show what the financial impact would be of, us, one community leaving, and how much incentive that would or would not be for Covanta to operate differently. Because I think if, the more we can educate people, it helps them make more informed judgments.
Well, I would agree with you. And I can always share the recycling reports about, where we were in '04 and where we are today, and how we've made a complete shift. But, even in Covanta, I know there was talk that when the recycling market went bad, they said, oh, they're burning plastic now. And or incinerating plastic. And just for the record, they've always been incinerating plastic. This is not something new. As I said before, and I'll use our recycle can as an example, it's a number 2 plastic, but it's not recyclable with our single stream market. So those type plastics, the little tyke toys that you see that your kids play with that are plastic, they get incinerated. So plastics have been incinerated in that plant since it opened. And it's not, and I know everyone, as soon as the market went bad, everyone assumed that it was, the issue was they were burning plastic for the first time. And the truth of the matter is they've always been burning plastic. So, I mean, there's definitely a education. You can't go wrong with, over educating. But I think, definitely by a push towards zero waste. I think the concept's great. We'll never get there to zero, but we can certainly try. And like I said, where we went from 16.7% recycling in '04 to our current hovering around 50%, we've made major strides. And as a result of that, we saved $2.3 million in tip fees. When you would think the numbers would go the other way, our budget has been reduced almost in half when it comes to trash disposal costs. And I think the residents would like to see that.
Yeah. So I think, I don't know the right mechanism, being newer to this board. How does this board partner with council and, the township administration to do that kind of educational outreach? Because I feel like that's a place where we really can make a real impact in real time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've got the Facebook, we've got the website, so we can definitely start to put more information. We have used the email system the township uses. We used to write articles for the semi-annual newsletter when it was printed. So we've got several avenues to work with the township on communication.
Well, I know that when we were considering how to fund renovations of the township building, we held town halls. Do we sell our sewer system? Do we float a bond? How do we, it has to be done. What does the community think about it? When we hired a new police chief, and there were a lot of concerns about policing on the national level. I don't think there ever really was a big concern about policing in our community. But our chief of police held town halls in order to educate our community about his philosophy of policing. So that's something the township has done in the past, is town halls to reach residents.
I have a question for Karen and Chris. It goes along with Covanta and maybe along with Eunice's suggestion. Covanta, I guess, is near the end of the contract. And from what I understand, the plant is so old that's why it's having the issues that it is having. Is there any way that Plymouth, along with other local municipalities that may use that plant, it's advantageous for us to use them because of the logistic aspect, surely for other municipalities surrounding it. But to go along with that education, is there any way that the municipalities can put pressure on Covanta to make the upgrades in order for it to meet really what the standards should be, or get it back in compliance with where they should have been. Is there any way that the municipalities can put pressure and
Yeah,
leverage in numbers?
well, I can only speak that I speak to David Sharp from Covanta often, and they are making a push to make it better. They have a new plant manager who is doing a fantastic job, and they self-admitted that they had slipped in some ways, I guess, and have really cracked down with the new plant manager. And I think they are going in the right direction. I think they realized that that there was an issue, and I think from the conversations that I've had, they're very concerned about perception, reality, the public, and trying to do their best to make it better. That's my own take on it. I do talk to him often, and he often says, I care about my employees. My employees work here. I work here. And he just said to me that I wouldn't be working here if I didn't feel safe. So, I mean, that's a legitimate reason. I have all my trash guys are a union shop that have never said anything that they felt compromised. So, I gotta hope that they're pushing in the right direction, and the regulations by DEP and the EPA are holding them to that highest standard. After all, what's the standard for if they're not going to be held to it?
Right, exactly.
I
Okay,
could
that's
just
good.
add too that as part of that whole DEP inspection and part of the fine that was levied on them, there was also a list of upgrades that they're making to that plant. Electrical service, electrical components, I guess some ventilation in the plant, and then some of those, and I know Mike knows about this, but some of those I guess pressure release valves, so there, I know there are some upgrades that are happening there as part of that whole DEP inspection.
Oh, the silencers on the steam vent.
Yeah. I guess they were old, and that's what the people were hearing, those loud noises. So there was a list of, along with the fine that was levied, there was a list of improvements that they were going to make.
That's good to know. I think, is it in the report that's on the website?
Yes.
Okay, I haven't read it, but you know what? I think if we keep promoting that, and maybe I would think that the residents that live nearby that have been really, I think just educating them and showing them here's what is on their, what do you call it, a target list. It's good for everybody to know that there is some upgrades coming. Thank you.
Is that the report from February sometime?
It probably is. I think it is. I know Karen Weiss shared some of it with me recently, so I would say it is the one from
Okay. I saw that they had like an appointment to talk to council about something that was going on in February, but I don't know. I only just saw that now, so obviously whatever I was looking at that date.
Yeah, they're going to be dumping everything on the floor while they're doing their work, and on the floor and they're not putting anything in the pit, and they're going to transfer truck everything out to another facility while they're doing all the work but they're still going to dump there, but they're going to dump in trailers on the floor, to put that in trailers and haul it out while they're doing the work.
Okay.
And I can always partner with Dave Sharp, and I know Mark Harlacker, who I've come to know and frequent conversations with, to be able to maybe get some insight on them, and maybe we can put some of that information on the website.
The other piece of this is the health concerns, as we heard from Mike Ewell, an environmental justice lawyer, a couple of years ago or a year and a half ago, that the hidden cost of the emissions from incineration could be more harmful to our human health than we realize at this point in time. And he's taken the initiative to help local municipalities create stronger air quality ordinances than what DEP or EPA requires, and he's been able to get them implemented in several locations. So the win-win for Plymouth would be if we do strengthen the emissions standards to such a high extent that it reduces the health impact to a very minimal level, so that that social cost of harm is reduced, then Plymouth gets a win-win. We may have to increase our tipping fee because Covanta will have to charge more for those upgrades to the higher emission quality. But then we can definitely tell our residents that we are made an investment in their health and are saving them from the harm that not having the right regulation on it would be causing to their families. So I think we could take this angle from both directions, financially and health wise.
Right.
Cool. Well, great discussion with you, Chris and Colleen. We're going to move on to some of our other topics. You're free to stay on, but I really appreciate your time with us
Thank you, everyone.
tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Colleen.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Colleen, call me then, okay?
I will.
All
I'll
right.
be in touch. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye.
So the next topic was the follow-up on the smoking ordinance proposal. I think, Karen, we were looking to see if the solicitor may have a position paper that he could share with Ogum.
He does not.
So is he willing to talk with Ogum? If Ogum calls him, can he just find out why it's not going to work?
I didn't ask him that about a conversation, so I don't know the answer to that.
Well, maybe if you wouldn't mind asking, maybe we could just put Ogum in touch with him so he could find out what's going on.
Oh, you want me to ask him rather than just having Ogden try to call him?
Well, that's up to Ogum. Yeah. Oh, so I guess I was asking for permission, maybe just as a courtesy, to ask the solicitor if he's open to receiving a call. So I just wanted to, kind of close that loop so we don't just push Ogum on the solicitor without him being forewarned.
Okay, I'll ask Mike that. Yeah, Mike Clock.
Okay, thank you. The other was that Andy and I have been, and Matt Peterson have been working on the Ready for 100 draft energy transition plan for Plymouth. We have a semi-draft that we're trying to get to a point where we could share with this group. I wanted to get your feedback to just hear what you guys think as an environmental board before we present it in front of the council. So I'll just take you through our table of contents right now, and I'm hoping that to get this document to you tomorrow, but this is kind of the organization of it. So, we've been going through a education series of what you could call classes or just work sessions since last August. By the end of May, we'll have attended 27 sessions. We've been receiving education from different presenters on different topics of energy topics. We've come up with a list of actions, and I think I shared this with you last month. And we also presented a kind of an overview of our action and goal settings with the council at their February workshop. We're back on the calendar for the April workshop to kind of go through this document. So Andy and I were hoping to get your feedback for this document. I know it's going to be a little push, but if we get it out tomorrow, if you could get us any response by the end of the week, we're going to email it to the council members so they have a full week before the April 5th workshop to kind of have a chance to read it, because it's got a few pages in here, and just rather than putting you to sleep, we want to give people a chance to go through it on a little more moderate pace. So we've got an introduction, scope of work, kind of how it fits in with municipal government, the principles for clean energy planning. You know, this is our step to meet the goal of our the resolution the township adopted in, what was it, March or April of 2019, to meet our 2035 and 2050 clean energy goals. So a lot of this is kind of setting the stage for what that means and how we would go about working towards that. We're kind of, you know, grouping this so it's a document that others who will read it, you know, once it's published or adopted, the public will have a little bit of reference points here. You know, so it kind of looks a little bit like a comp plan in the sense of just touching on some of the township principles. The greenhouse gas inventory summary, we're trying to divide, you know, what is the community-wide Plymouth Township emissions profile look like, and then what is it for just municipal operations. So this part of the plan will just be focused on municipal operation. Is how does Plymouth Township modify its policies and its procedures and its decision points to kind of move towards these clean energy goals. So we're focusing on how they're going to do that for their vehicles, their buildings, and you know, purchasing for electricity choices. So we talk about down in section 5, we've got their headline goals. Might have shared that with you last month. And then how we would go about achieving that change. The energy profile is a picture of, in 2019, we captured the spending on electricity, natural gas, and vehicle gasoline and diesel. And then we go into the actions for how we would suggest that Plymouth start to transition to that. So I think that's section 6 coming down here. And I guess we didn't update the table of content. So that's something we'll have to do. So it's got a bunch of tables, things in there, figures, and then we start the document. We've got an executive summary. And then we go through scope of work, leading by example. So the idea here is that once Plymouth adopts this transition plan, then it'll be easier for us as we work on the next phase of the plan, which would be the community-wide, township-wide, so that it kind of is lead by example. If Plymouth is starting to take these actions to transition its energy, then you as residents, institutions, businesses, you know, whatever we have in our township can start to do similar actions to go forward. And then I think our real action plan is, oh, then we want to reach out to stakeholders that are going to be important to understand. We've got a little profile of the township itself, clean energy vision. We're working on 4 areas: procurement, efficiency and conservation, vehicle fleet electrification, and then renewable energy production. So can we generate our own renewable energy locally? And then we've got the headline goals that we talked about last month. And then we go into the actual action plan for each of these areas. There's going to be a profile of all of these different emissions that, so that's what I wanted to correct before we give it to you. And then we've got the action plans for each of those areas: procurement. And then we talk about which departments would be involved and timing wise. Then we go into efficiency objectives. Then we talk about fleet electrification, and then renewable energy production. And the idea here was that as we worked on this, there were quite a few actions to choose from. And we as a team had picked the ones that we felt would be a little easier for the township to start with. take action on early. So it's all about trying to get policies implemented, department monitoring of where they're spending their energy, their fleet, aging of vehicles, what's their plan for that. So a lot of these things will be just preparatory work in the first few years where you're kind of collecting all your data, starting to realize that, yes, you want to make, decisions in the future that'll move towards these newer choices. So it's really about helping the township and staff become familiarized and start their behavior changes so they can start making those purchasing decisions to help us meet our goals. Any questions about any of this?
Bill, did you say you're gonna send that out to us?
Yeah. So I'm hoping to get it, the accounts, the physical accounts for electricity and vehicles and natural gas. I didn't have a good summary of everything all in one place, so I kind of have to refit it into the document. So yes, if I can get that updated tomorrow, I will send a copy of this document out for you guys to start reviewing. I can send it out two ways. One is I can just give you a link to the Google Drive. If you want to make suggestions, you can do that right in the Google document, and I can also attach it as a Word document in case you want to make comments directly in the Word doc. Either way, that would be comfortable for you. I know it's a ask, you've already done a lot this week just reviewing the zero energy stuff. So if any of you have the capacity to give us any feedback, and even if it's early next week, the version we send to council, this is going to be a fluid document, and any feedback at any time will be welcome. It's not like we have to get this draft, first draft right. There'll always be improvements. So, even if you don't get us feedback by Friday, you can definitely give us feedback through next week, because we don't go into council till the following Monday, I believe, or maybe it's 2 weeks from now, the 5th, right? Yeah, next week is the 23rd or 29th, and then the following week would be the 2nd, or is it April 2nd? When do we go? The council? Oh, it's April 5th. So next week. So actually, we don't have to email this to council until Friday the 26th. So actually, we've got a week and a half to take your feedback. So, all right, we aren't in such a crunch as I thought. Andy, any comments on where we are, what you've seen?
No, I mean, I think especially what you were saying there, just at the end. I mean, it's a draft. I know Bill's pushing to get that energy profile information in there. Originally, we were talking about just providing some example material in there, but he wants to make a push to get in there better data. That's good. But it's a draft. We're going to keep working it. It's first view by council will be in the workshop on the 5th, but even then we're going to keep working through April, and hopefully start to wrap up in May there, but we'll see what council directs us to do. So
Yeah, we definitely need to have council work feedback. So that's why we want to get the draft to them for that April 5th meeting, and then they can continue to send us feedback as we go forward into May. The series of sessions that we are attending, finishes the end of May. So anyone who's working on a draft plan for their municipality is kind of targeting maybe the summer adoption. So, even if council needs a little bit more time to review it through June, we could still have it brought forward for, July or August adoption. So I guess, Rick, I had sent you a list of accounts, and I guess because of the way we extracted our Pico account data, I think that, you know, the person that did that just searched on anything that had Plymouth in the account name. And so Plymouth Fire, Plymouth Ambulance, Plymouth Gardens Apartment came in. So I remember in the budget meeting that there was some relationship between the township and these ambulance and fire, but I don't know whether we should include them in the energy transition plan or not. What's your thoughts?
So I did look at your list, and all the highlighted yellow were not our accounts, not our responsibility. So there is some, you know, the township does provide the ambulance and mostly the firehouses with some funds, but ultimately they're responsible for their,
Good.
you know, their Pico bills. The only one I wasn't sure about, there was one towards the end there. It said Sandy Hill and I guess White's Road. I don't, it's kind of in like the lighter gray color. It's like third from the end. I don't know what that account is, but all the ones that are in yellow, you're correct. They're not ours. The one that's in like a light yellow towards the end, that Germantown sign light, that is ours. That's the community center sign light out here on Germantown and Jolly. But the ones in bright yellow are not our responsibility.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that.
Sure.
A great review. So any other questions about that? All right. I know we've been working on getting your My Account and Portfolio Manager connected. We found that other municipalities are having a similar challenge. Abington has been trying to figure out how to do it, and everybody's looking for a solution. So if we find, if we're getting any success from your contact, Rick, I don't know if we'll find any resolution to this until the first person figures it out. But
yeah, if I get any info, I'll let you know. But I haven't gotten any positive feedback yet, or you know, any positive answers yet.
Sure.
Sounded like Pico really doesn't even do it. It's some company out in Chicago. So there's not a lot of, I guess, you know, back and forth between Pico and this company. I don't know all the particulars of it, but it sounds like it only happens every so often where they do a training and they do it like countrywide. We're not countrywide, but statewide, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's very good. Thank you. So we already talked about Cavanna, so I'll move right on to the tree planting for Saturday. Is it April 25th?
Yeah. And I emailed and called the girl from the Horticultural Society, and I have not heard back about changing the venue. So I'm hoping she gets back to me. I just, you know, kind of asked the question if it was a problem to do that. And if it was, let me know. And I haven't heard back, so I don't know the answer.
And I made a error. It's Saturday, April 24th rather than the 25th. Maybe if you don't mind noting that, Debbie, in the minutes. All right, so then as we get closer, we'll have one more board meeting before the 25th. So we'll either end up at Harriet Weatherall, or we'll end up at one of the Cowell Parks, right?
Yes.
Okay.
As soon as I hear, I'll let you know.
Thanks. Sorry, did someone offer something? I guess just in terms of volunteers, who is available on Saturday the 25th with or interested in helping us with tree plantings?
I can.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
available.
interested too.
Debbie.
I am.
Okay, we got Mike, Debbie, Eunice, myself. Karen, do you think you'll be out there that day?
Yes. Yeah, I had said I am, but I said at the same time someone else did. So sorry about that.
You're
No
not gonna
problem.
miss the fun.
Oh, yeah, you better believe it. It's on my calendar already.
Oh, great. How many trees do we get, Rick?
We got 10, I believe, 10 total. Some are, well, some are trees and some are like serviceberry bushes. So they're not, actual trees, but they're native, species. So, 10 total units.
That's about the number we did a year ago or so in Harry Wetherall.
I look back, I think we did 8 a year ago, a year and a half ago this fall.
And I remember how bitterly cold it was, and the wind was like, we were like in that little truck to get coffee, and none of us wanted to venture
That
out.
was only November.
That was November. So at least hopefully here in April, hopefully we'll have a little better weather.
Right.
Any comments, Debbie, on Facebook or what the thoughts are moving forward?
Well, I guess Carolyn left us, but last month she offered to help. And I sent her the list of suggested topics, but I really didn't hear from her. So anyway, I did send something to Brandon. He did put today's meeting on there. And if anybody's connected, there was something from the Audubon.org about climate action guide. I don't know if you saw it, but I thought that was a pretty neat, it says feeling like you can't make a difference. And there's a, just a little guide of how you can make small efforts towards sustainability. So I guess I'll keep trying to chip away at it, but if anybody else wants to help. I think Brandon isn't only looking for me to give content. So if anybody else has something. Oh, Brandon, you mentioned that Colleen sent you something. Is it about her composting? Is it something that tied into her conversation?
Yeah. Let me just double check the email really quick.
And Debbie, do you mind reminding us how we turn on notifications? Because I thought I liked the site, but I don't know that I'm notified that something happened to the page. Is there?
Oh, I think you just have to like them, right, Brandon? You just have to like the group.
Yeah.
In Facebook. So if you go on the Environmental Advisory Board Plymouth Township, and then you like them, then you should get notifications.
For some reason, I guess I didn't notice it. Maybe it just got buried in other notifications.
No, Facebook has changed its algorithm.
That's true.
And it just picks up headlines. So what you can do is go, I think it's the top 3 little dots, and you can change it not just from headline, but like all new postings or all new notifications. Anyway, I got a notice about it from one of my other Facebook groups that Facebook is sort of sifting what they want you to see from the groups that you like. So go to those 3 little dots at the top and change it so that you see absolutely everything that gets posted in that group.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.
Any other topics anybody has on their mind for future meetings? I'm kind of stalling while I see if Rick pops back.
There he is.
There.
Sorry.
Any updates from Rick?
I mean, nothing really new. It's just still working on the township building, design and development of the renovation, and getting ready here. We're just getting outside now, so getting ready to start doing some of our outside projects. Nothing major. Some bathroom renovations at a couple parks, and sand volleyball court renovations here at the community center. So yeah, not much.
Sounds good. We'll enjoy the great new weather. Spring is coming.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty much all we had planned. So do we have a motion to close?
A motion.
And a second?
Oh, second, there we close.
All right, Andy, thanks. So appreciate everybody's input tonight. It was a pretty rousing discussion. So I think we've got some ideas percolating that we'll hopefully have some ideas to continue with as we go forward. Appreciate everybody's input tonight.